this is Ken Douglas reporting. From the Cleveland Stadium, there's been absolutely riot. The crowds have gone berserk, and we've managed to get the Beatles in safely.
This was our role in life, was to make people buy more beer. That's how we actually started off, was to, the more beer they bought, the more likelihood of our pay going up. So it's a fantastic training, because you actually had to get results, or else you were going to be out next week. So we did what the Germans call Mach, Schau, make show.
In Germany we played 8 hours a night, in hour on, hour off, hour on, hour off. So you had to keep them Germans happy, or whoever the audience was.
We started off having no audience, and we had to work our arses off to try and get people in. People would appear at the door of the club, and we were on stage, and there was nobody at the tables. We used to try and get them in to sell beer for the manager.
We used to just be up there frothing, you know, at the mouth, just foaming, just stomping away, doing this, so... Those were the days.
The Beatles as live performers, I don't think anybody in the world ever saw us outside of Liverpool and Hamburg and a few places in England where we travelled to, because that's when we had to perform live to a small audience in the dance hall. We had to hold them. We were a great live performers then. Then we were doing an hour, 2-hour show, you know, and we had to keep it up.
See, so we knew we had something going. We'd managed to make an empty club packed, and Saturday night you just could not move for like young girls and guys. And it was the crowd too. It was the people.
At this midday session at the Cavern, we proudly present the Beatles!
We were performers in Liverpool, Hamburg, and around the dance halls, you know, and what we generated was fantastic.
The Cavern, when we first worked there, not many people came in. By the end of when we worked there, you couldn't get in there, and it was sweat and everything, so electrifying. When we played the Cavern, when we played the really early days, we really enjoyed performing. You know, and that was the fun, was to perform.
So we were just enjoying, really, that's all. We enjoyed just working in as a band because there was nothing else we wanted to do. We really got off on that, and we were very happy when we could make, you know, £5 a week each, and then when we started making £40 a week each, you know, we were ecstatic.
It was the music that was interesting, that was important. You know, as long as we were, you know, going forward and going somewhere, it didn't matter.
And no one can conceive, you know, that we were going to be as big as we were. My tiny brain wouldn't acknowledge it. I mean, I wanted to play the Palladium. That was big. Then we did the Palladium, oh, that was over with.
And there was nobody to touch us in Britain, you know.
The situation was in Liverpool, the being big, or, you know, big and famous was in Liverpool. All it did, suddenly it got England, then it got Europe, then it got America, then it was like the world, you know, but it was the same experience, just being expanded all the time.
So by the time we came to play the sort of big shows and the big gigs around, and by the time we went to America, we'd already been famous about 5 times in all these other little levels.
But as soon as we made it. The edges were knocked off. Brian put us in suits and all that, and we made it very, very big, but we sold out, you know.
Next thing is with the biggest thing. Everybody's screaming, nobody hears the music. We lose interest in the music.
This number...
I never felt people came to hear our show. I felt they came to see us. Because from the count-in on the first number, the volume of screams just drowned everything out.
Tonight was, you know, marvellous, ridiculous. Well, there was 8,000 people all shouting at once, and we were trying to shout louder than them with microphones, and we still couldn't beat them.
We're now a big band that when we went woo and shook our heads, you know, everyone went mad. I personally, as I say, I don't really think it was that bad.
It was like being in the eye of a hurricane, and so there was never a time when you thought, what's going on? And that was about as deep as it got. What is happening, or what? You know, you'd suddenly wake up in the middle of a concert or a happening, and think, what? How did I get here? You know. The last thing I remember was playing music in a club, and the next minute this. But we never thought about it too much because it was an ongoing thing. It was happening to us, and it was hard to see. You know, we were just in the middle, being ushered from room to room.
We had 12 songs, roughly just over 25 minutes was our act. And if we didn't like the place, we would do everything fast and get out in 20.
Suddenly your 2-hour act has got to be down to 20 minutes. Suddenly you do 20 minutes like that. But next minute, 20 minutes is a drag, and you've got to do the same thing every night. Do your hit record.
It got a bit boring being Fab. You know, she loves you, woo! You think you've lost your love, you know, it's, oh God, not again.
It got pretty boring. No, not after the first couple of months, it took years. But I've said this many times, by the time the Beatles hit America, they no longer could play live very well at all, you know.
It was really all over. Sort of that aspect of just being a group playing and what we're going to do, and where we didn't have to care, where we could drink and just, you know, just be up there being a rock band in our leather suits.
It's great at the beginning, you know, where, you know, you're recognized, you get a great seat in a restaurant, and, you know, things are bigger and things come to you faster. You know, all that is great, and then you really want that to end.
They used us as an excuse to go mad. The world did, and then blamed it on us. And we were just in the middle of in a car or so, hotel room. We couldn't really do much. I mean, we couldn't go out. We couldn't, you know, couldn't do anything.
It got that, you know, people were sort of touching us as we walked past, that kind of thing. And wherever we went, we were supposed to be whatever. We were supposed to put up with all sorts of shit from Lord Mayors and their wives and be touched and poured like Hard Day's Night only a million more times. You know?
Which one are you?
Eric.
Eric? Eric, here is the American public.
I'm John.
You're John.
It's only a joke.
But it just built up. It built up. The bigger we got, the more unreality we had to face, you know, the more we were expected to do, until when you didn't sort of shake hands with the mayor's wife, she started abusing you and screaming, and we had these people thrust on us, you know, till this complete craziness is surrounding you, and you're doing exactly what you don't want to do with people you can't stand.
The weirdest one, I think, with the Beatles was when we played Manila, played the Philippines. And we were on a tour that was going to take us to Australia. We'd already just done Japan, we'd done Europe.
And as soon as we got there, it was bad news. It was a negative, very negative vibe the moment we got off the plane.
So we did the show, and I didn't know anything about that Madame Marcus had invited us to dinner.
We don't normally get invited. Usually silly ambassadors want to see us around the place. But, you know, so somebody just set it up, and he had to go along with it, and we didn't know about it.
And we said, we won't be able to meet him. Sorry, all the apologies in the world, but it's our one day off on this tour. We got there, and because they didn't listen to us, they said, right, you're due to meet the president of the country tomorrow. We said, no, we told you, we're not going. They said, you'll have to. And they said, oh, great, we've got them in a corner, they're here, they can't snub the president. But we made it a point of principle. We said, no, we're not going. We told you, we're wired ahead, it's our one day off. And I go back to the hotel, and it's like, millions of these people there. You've got to come. And we turn on the television, and there's Imelda from telly.
And the TV commentators saying, and they're still not here yet, and, you know, the Beatles are, you know, supposed to be here, and we sat there in amazement, couldn't believe it, and we just watched ourselves not arriving at the presidential palace.
So the next morning, the national paper, which we now find out, because it was Marcos, it was his paper, this was not democracy there. The national newspaper had the headlines, Beatles snub president.
So then things started to get really weird, you know, come on, get out of bed, get packed, we're getting out of here. And we get to the airport, and there's chanting, people hating us all the way.
And so consequently, set the mob on us and tried to beat us up, which they did. They beat up a lot of people with us.
And then we got pushed around from one corner of the lounge to another, you know.
You treat like ordinary passenger, passenger, you were saying. If it's an ordinary passenger, he doesn't get kicked, does he?
And then we got on the plane, which was a British Airways, we were all kissing the seats and everything. You know, this is Britain, little piece of Britain. It was feeling like that, you know, you were definitely in a foreign country with all the rules had changed, and they did carry guns after all, so, you know, you weren't too sort of...
Apparently they took the money off Brian Epstein that we'd earned at the concert. And that was it. We got out of there, and it was such a relief, but I felt such resentment for those people.
Do you think this is going to be a controversial tour like the Philippines one?
Oh, no. No, it's going to be fine.
What makes you say that, Paul?
Oh, it'll be fine. You watch.
This is Doug Layton and Tommy Charles. We're reminding you that our fantastic Beatle boycott is still in effect. We have not forgotten what the Beatles said.
Do you feel that Americans are out to get you, that this is all developing into something of a witch hunt?
No, we thought it might be that kind of thing. I think a lot of people in England did, because there's this thing about, you know, when America gets violent and gets very hung up on a thing, it tends to have this sort of Ku Klux Klan thing around it.
And we're going to demonstrate with different ways and tactics to stop this performance and make a stop to these accusations. This is nothing but blasphemy.
I think the craziness was going on in the world and in the band. You know, we were kind of normal and the rest of the world was crazy. You know, the Beatles became like an excuse for everybody to freak out.
Reporting from the Cleveland Stadium has been absolutely riot. The crowds have gone berserk, and we've managed to get the Beatles in safely. And I'm sure that whole show's going to stop now. The police couldn't control them; they broke the barriers, and very luckily we managed to get the boys inside after a tremendous riot here.
By the time we got to Candlestick Park, I think we knew now, yeah, sure, you know, this wasn't fun anymore. I think that was the main point. And, you know, we'd always tried to keep, you've got to really try and keep some fun in it for yourself.
It felt dangerous, you know, because everybody was out of hand and out of line. Even the cops were out of line. You know, they were all just caught up in the mania. You know, it was like they were in this big movie, and it was like we were the ones trapped in the middle of it while everybody else was going down.
And the fact that we'd done it so many times. So by then it was like, yeah, well, don't tell anyone, but this is probably our last gig.
I certainly felt that that was it, you know, that we weren't going to tour again like that. I never really projected into the future. I was just thinking this is going to be such a relief to, you know, to not have to go through that madness.
That's when we decided to stop in '66, to go into the studio where we could hear each other and create any fantasy that came out of anybody's brain.
In one way it was good because we went into the recording scene and really sort of expressed ourselves through the records then.
So in the back of the van that took us away from that gig, we all kind of said, let's stop touring. We didn't tell anyone for a while. We decided, well, we didn't need to really tell anyone.
You know, I'm just sorry for the people that can't see us live. And sometimes you haven't missed anything because you wouldn't have heard us, but sometimes I think you might have enjoyed it. I'm sorry for them, you know.